I'm not the great expert on this, that actually there are Enfield residents all over the borough doing amazing things, some of which we might hear about, and in other cases they're just working away in their own little local triangle, actually bringing in biodiversity. And even in Broomfield, which is my closest park, though there's a number of parks that I love around here, Grovelands, Arnos are close to me. There are so many different groups, and I think that's a sign that when people get going and start seeing the difference that they can make, that it spreads. So we in Broomfield we have a wetlands that people lobbied for, there are beehives, a community pond, there's a planting group, there's entertainment and cafe group, and the one that is relatively recent and that I helped set up is our lakes group. But people will have their, I think actually there is a very, very recent one, which is a butterfly group and a wild meadow group. So once things get going, people get the sense that there may be a patch that they can pick up and have a go at. It's very empowering, as well as Aurora mentioned, fantastic for our mental health and indeed our physical health, not only because we're active, but because even what we breathe in when we're in the middle of nature is actually being proven to be good for our body, and totally different from what's often a polluted environment that we breathe in when we're walking on our local roads. Enfield is one of the London boroughs that has the greatest number of parks, the greatest area given to parks. I'm sometimes told that it's pipped at the post by Richmond with its great big park there, but I'm not quite sure. That the league doesn't matter. What matters is that it is a real jewel in the crown of this borough, and something that we not only can be proud of, but we can nurture. And speaking for myself, it was during the various lockdowns when I was on my own but walking in nature that I really came to see both sides of that, to really pay attention in detail to how the trees were opening up, the behavior of the different birds, the sounds that I could hear, really using all my senses in the different Enfield parks, but also with some sense of shame, what as human beings we were doing to the nature that we had there, and how we were stamping on some things, plants you could take as a metaphor, that people were chucking rubbish there. And for me, it was seeing the state of the water in the three parks of Broomfield that got me recognizing that it's just shameful that we do that as humanity, and buying a litter picker, and over the last 2 years pulling all that CRAP out, and we had the first nesting swans in sort of that people can remember in the park. But where does this fit, as well as sort of personal satisfaction from doing things? Where does it fit in our bigger thoughts about climate change? And first, I would see the parks as a sort of beating heart of the campaign to help us reconnect to nature. That is actually something really strange in our culture. We're a very nature depleted culture in our thinking and feeling. And there's one of my favorite quotes from Einstein, that I won't say all of it, but he says we have a false consciousness of separation from the rest of the universe, which is a sort of optical delusion. It's a sort of prison for us that restricts us to just affection for a few things. And our task must be to free ourselves from this prison by widening our circles of compassion to embrace all living creatures and the whole of nature in its beauty. In other words, to recognize that we are part of nature, and that keeping that alive, keeping all parts of it alive, is our our role really as human beings within the whole, and that we can do that through these wonderful spaces that we have scattered about across the area that we live in. And it can be something very small. Say we've just got a new butterfly project. Maybe it's preserving the butterflies. Maybe it's noticing the songbirds, some of which are endangered. Um, Maybe it's spotting that there are fungi everywhere that are very beautiful in their own right. It's really sort of mindfully using our attention, um, touching things, watching things carefully, not just taking a quick snap or looking at our phone as we jog through the park, hearing the sound of those millions of leaves as we walk through the park, and helping our native species. One of the tasks that I have set for myself, and others are helping me, is to improve the biodiversity in the lakes and around the lakes with native aquatic plants. And just a signal that we've got all the knowledge out there in our community. I was walking to the park yesterday with somebody who's also, we exchange the stories of the swans and what they're up to and the attacks and protections and flying offs. And it emerged she's a landscape architect. And I said, oh, don't do anything about biodiversity, do you? Did she? Of course she did. And she works with schools and advises them. So last night she sent me a huge list of aquatic plants for planting at the margins of the lakes or planting in the lakes to improve the water quality, to give the birds that live there something natural to eat, because they stay because they're well fed, but they shouldn't have to depend on human beings, that it should be there in nature. So we have a huge amount of knowledge. We have people who, care about this, and we can all, in the words of Einstein, widen our circles of compassion to embrace all living creatures, and each of us in our own way, to our own bit, to make sure that they survive and thrive, and together as one big ecosystem within our borough and beyond, live healthily, including the human presence.